Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And once again, welcome back to another episode of All Talk Oncology, where we empower cancer patients through insightful conversations that reinforces confidence and certainty about their cancer condition. We want to deepen your understanding as far as your mindset is concerned, keep you connected to the latest advancements in the cancer industry, and give you a well-rounded approach for your cancer journey. In 2024, it is my mission to coach 100 cancer thrivers, whether you're in treatment, whether you finish your treatment, or you want to figure out life after cancer. I'm here to help you. If it sounds like this is talking to you, book a discovery call with me by clicking the link below, and let's see which program of mine that is going to be a best fit for you. Now, with that being said, here we are again with another phenomenal guest. Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And again, we have another phenomenal guest. I mean, you're going to hear that. I don't care. It could be my 1,000 broadcast. You're going to hear a phenomenal guest because everyone on here brings a gem that you can walk away from. I'm going to say that one more time. Everyone on here, every guest that's been on this show is dropping a gem that you can walk away from. And that's the goal. Being able to give you some tools or gems that you can utilize on your cancer journey. Or if you're finishing your cancer journey, gems that you can utilize that can give you a sense of purpose again, a sense of direction. This is what it's about. And so everyone on here is phenomenal. And so our next guest, she's nothing short of that. We travel to, I don't know, the South, I guess, we're going to the northeastern part of Florida, right? This is all the way from, we're bringing this person all the way from Jacksonville. But let me tell you a little bit about this individual. She's just not your normal individual who, living a normal life, right? I mean, she lived a normal life in her sense of normalcy, but she's an amazing individual. We're talking to a Olympian, right? Olympian winner, a gold medalist. Okay. She's taken, I don't know how many medals, and she is a two-time inductee into the Hall of Fame. She's going to be talking to you. You want to talk about a person who has work ethic, someone knows what it's like to overachieve and go beyond. This person has done that. This person knows what it's like to live and be humbled and live a life that's sometimes difficult. And so I hope that you can listen to everything she's talking about and glean this information. It's an honor for us to bring this next guest. It's an honor for us to have her on our show. Please welcome and help me welcome Shannon Miller, the Olympian star here, huh?
Thank you so much. Great to be here with all of you.
Shannon, it's a privilege to have you in that smile. Look, you guys, I hope you guys go to my YouTube channel and see, you're gonna see this video of this episode with Shannon. She has an amazing smile. Her energy is just great. Shannon, welcome to All Talk Oncology.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here with you and with all of you that are listening.
Yes, thank you. Shannon, you have quite the background. You know, Tell us a little bit about Shannon Miller and who she is and what she was doing prior to being diagnosed to cancer.
Oh, that's a big question. I feel like I've lived a lot of life, but for those that remember way back when I was a gymnast. I started gymnastics, kind of fell into the sport at 5 years old, loved it. I mean, just absolutely fell in love. And to your point, I knew that I wasn't the most talented athlete out there. My legs were turned in when I was born. I wore braces. I wasn't the most powerful or the strongest or the most flexible. So I knew I just had to outwork everyone. And that's really kind of how my work ethic started. And it just built from there until the 1992 Olympics. I was on that Olympic team, and we had a great time. It was amazing. And then 4 years later, came back as part of the 1996 Olympic team, the Magnificent Seven, as we would come to be known. And that was just such an incredible experience to walk into the Georgia Dome and have 40,000 screaming people, and to be able to bring home the gold for the US was incredible. And then very shortly after that, I retired from sport. The only thing I'd really ever known was kind of elite athletics, as well as being in school. My parents were big advocates of staying up with my education. So I kind of threw myself into my schoolwork. I got 2 degrees, one in marketing and entrepreneurship, and then went to law school at Boston College. And then after that, decided I really wanted to jump into kind of the health and fitness area, because not just as an Olympian, but really what happened after the Olympics, and kind of really not knowing how to stay healthy as kind of a non-athlete anymore. And so I really kind of took that on, and my platform really became just helping women make their health a priority. And what are all the ways that we can do this? And a few years later, I ended up launching my company devoted just to that. I was actually hosting a radio show as well, and talking about everything from diabetes and heart disease to fitness and nutrition and cancer awareness, early screenings, all of those good things. And it was just a couple months later that I went in for a doctor's appointment, one that I readily admit that I actually called up to cancel. I thought I felt fine. I had so many things going on. I looked at my calendar. I was going to be out of town on the date of my appointment. My son had just turned a year old. The holidays are coming up, you name it. And we're all busy, and we always want to wait, push it off until I, quote, have more time. And on that phone call, I just thought, I am not walking the walk. As an advocate for health, I'm not doing my job. And so I ended up taking the first available, which was that morning. And it was at that appointment that morning, my doctor found a baseball-sized cyst on my left ovary, which moved into this whirlwind of tests and scans. And by January of 2011, I was waking up from surgery to find out that it was cancer. It was a rare form of ovarian cancer, and my world kind of stopped. And it was just, the beginning of a whole new journey.
My goodness. Imagine that. I mean, I'm listening to the things you were doing, just getting wellness and nutrition and everything for especially for the ladies, and helping them, because at that moment you must have felt that didn't exist or wasn't really enough. Right. And so you started that. I mean, just tremendous to be able to give your energy that way. And then
Well,
go ahead.
Well, and I just felt like I watched my mom, who got us to our doctor's appointments, but she was always doing everything for everyone else and always kind of putting herself last. And I watched this with my friends and other professionals in my life, and they're giving and giving and giving, but they weren't taking care of their health. And I thought, well, if I have any kind of a voice through my athletic career, there's something there. There's something that I can, and I dove into the research, and I dove into all of the information, and thought, if I can just be that little voice, I'm not a medical doctor, but if I can be that little voice to remind them that making your health a priority, no matter who you are. I mean, I focus on women because that's what I know, but it doesn't matter who you are. Making that time for yourself is so important, not only because it is your health and it's the foundation for everything that you do, and it helps you be there for everyone else in your life, but also because you get to set this great example for your children, your grandchildren, and all of those people around you. And so I became so passionate about that. And then of course, 6 months after I launched my company, just hit that wall.
Yeah. Well, I can see that passion. You know, it oozes through, right? I can see that when you talk about it and how you light up. I can see the passion there. And so getting that diagnosis, I mean, obviously you had no idea. So what was that like, sitting there and then listening to someone tell you, man, this is ovarian cancer?
So I think initially that kind of first phase, where it was weeks of what they call wait and observe, which is excruciating. Nobody wants to wait and observe. We want it done. We want to know what it is, get it out. And I think that was the first scariest part for me, because it was all of these what ifs. What if it is cancer? What if it is spread? What if my son doesn't have a mother. It's all those what ifs, and they all kind of come closing in on you real quick. And I did my best to rely on my faith and my family, and um, it's just hard. I mean, anyone that's gone through it, it's just difficult. I think for me, that portion was maybe the scariest because of the unknown. After the diagnosis, I very quickly found out one, the diagnosis that it was cancer, a rare form of ovarian cancer. But almost immediately, I found out that they had caught it early. And so there was kind of this panic and then this breath and this relief that I had gone in. And then I think a few days later, it started to dawn on me. I mean, I had gone into that doctor's appointment. I very specifically told my doctor I felt fine. And in that moment, I did. But I had forgotten about, and my husband actually reminded me. I was doing an interview weeks later, and with Robin Roberts, and she asked me if I had any signs and symptoms, and I had said no. And my husband kind of pulled me aside later and said, "But do you remember me? Do you remember calling me at my office one day, doubled over with pain in your stomach, and you were worried you weren't going to be able to get our son out of his crib?" And I had completely blocked that memory because, as a mom, you're just go, go. Okay, stomach ache, no worries, move on. I didn't think about the bloating until afterwards. And then I suddenly remembered a moment when I had to change in an airport for a really important meeting. And I brought my favorite suit, and I was zipping up my skirt, and I thought, like, this won't zip up. And yet I had lost 8 pounds. And I had thought, well, my body's just changing post baby and post nursing, and I don't know what's going on. So I didn't think much of it. But when you start to learn the signs and symptoms and you go, oh, sudden weight loss and bloating and stomach pain, and then the wheels start turning. And I realized how little I had known about this disease. And of course, even someone in the health and wellness world, you can't know the signs and symptoms for everything. And a stomach ache doesn't always mean cancer. So I guess what I learned during that time is just to pay more attention to my body, pay more attention to what's going on. And now really I just write down little odd things that happen. And that way, if I go into my doctor's office, I can see if there's a pattern. Was it a one-off, or is this happening for 2 weeks at a time and I need to mention it? And so I've kind of learned more about paying attention to my body as a non-athlete, because as an athlete, you are paying severe attention. As an athlete, as a gymnast flying around 10, 12 feet in the air, I need to know exactly what's going on in my body at all times. And I did. I need to know when I can go and when I need to sit out. But as a non-elite athlete, I had just kind of thrown everything out and said, no, I feel fine. I'm good. Nothing's broken. I can muddle through. And so I think that was a really big lesson to me, was listen to my body and just really pay attention and speak up and advocate for myself when something doesn't feel right.
My goodness. That's some gems there. One, paying attention to your body. And I want you to explain this, because you brought out, as an Olympian, the precision of paying attention to your body has to be there in order for you to perform at a certain level. But then as a non-athlete, just going through life, there was a disconnect. So how does someone pay attention to their body? And coming from you, especially because you know what it's like to pay attention on certain aspects. So how does one pay attention to their body so that they can be aware of what's happening?
I think it can be a challenge, and especially if it's not something you grew up with. And even again, like you said, as an elite athlete, I knew what to do. I had years of training in understanding what was going on in my body and paying attention. I had coaches that helped me learn how to do that. But as a non-athlete, and then going through a pregnancy, your body's going through all crazy things. You don't know what's going on. And so sometimes you just are so focused on everything else, work and making sure, kids are okay, and family, and taking care of parents. There's all those things in life, all those millions of things. And I think often that the most simple answer to your question is just to pause and just check in with yourself every single day, whether it's 2 minutes or 10 minutes, but you need to check in. How am I doing today, mentally, physically, psychologically? How am I feeling today? And in most days, it's probably going to be, I feel pretty good. Okay, could have gotten a little bit more sleep last night, but I'm good. But every now and then, you're going to go, you know what? This is like the fourth day in a row that I've had a really big headache or a stomach ache, or I feel more tired than I usually do. So noticing the changes, we can't expect that our doctor is going to know everything. And it is very important to stay up with the regular doctor's appointments to kind of find your baseline, find that line of communication with someone and kind of track that progress. But it's so important that we help them out by understanding our body, because no one knows us better than we do. I know when something is off, and someone else might not think that it's something that's off. And so it's important to be able to write it down or vocalize it, or at least admit it to ourselves. That's often the first step. So pause, be very candid with yourself, and try to write things down when there's outliers or there's things that are off. And then I like to keep a pad of paper or a list on my phone. I take that into my doctor's appointments, because I know as soon as I get in there, I want to get out as quickly as possible. Nobody wants to sit in that paper gown any longer than they have to. And when I get in there, there's, the nerves that take over, and I forget to ask questions. So I bring in my paper or my phone and I say, I have a few questions for you when we're finished. And then I go through every single thing before I leave the office, because I know as soon as I get back in my car, I'm not going to think about it for another year.
That's sound advice. Dropping gems. Take notes, you guys. I hope that you listen to everything she talked about, because we have to pause. It's so important. We're in a society where things move fast and we're always on the go. And so you're like, where do I pause? You need to find that time. Whether
If you
it's
have time to scroll, you have time to pause.
I love that. Love that. If you have time to scroll to social media, yes, pause. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about that. So here you live your best life, you're retiring, you're helping individuals, you get into the wellness, you get diagnosed with a rare ovarian cancer. What is your mindset? What's going on at that point, and how did you get out of that up and down cycle? Like, how did you deal with that up and down cycle mentally?
I'm still in the up and down cycle. I think I don't know that that ever truly goes away.
Mm.
Because I found out post surgery, it was this weird, and this is going to sound odd, but it was this weird feeling of both relief as well as fear, as well as this return to that competitive mindset that I knew through sport. It was finally, we know what it is. And then I had the silver lining of we caught it early. It had not spread. Now, a couple of weeks later, they found out it was a higher malignancy than they originally thought. And that's when I learned I needed to go through a pretty aggressive form of chemotherapy. And that was kind of this other curveball that got thrown at me. So I'm still trying to recover from surgery. I'm not allowed to hold my son. And so, but at the same time, I'm so excited to just like have the surgery done. And then now we've got to start chemo. And so I kind of went back to a lot of those lessons learned through sport that I hadn't utilized in about a decade. And all of a sudden it was, okay, what are my goals? The goal is to get through without stopping treatment. Just get through without any breaks. That's going to give me the best chance of success, the best chance of non-recurrence. So let's check that box. And then it was, how do I do that? Well, I can't do much physically, but I can start with, getting enough protein and hydration and really the mindset again, leaning on my faith, but also in just getting in the right headspace of, okay, I can do this. You give yourself all those great pep talks and you watch Rocky a couple times and you think you could do this. And and then the first week of chemotherapy hits. And by the end of the week, I was knocked down. I was humbled to the core. I was back in the hospital. I couldn't keep down food. I couldn't keep down water. I had heard about, people that are playing tennis while they're going through chemo. And of course, at the time I was just learning about all of this and learning that there are a zillion different types of chemotherapy and everyone reacts different. So my story is not someone else's story and vice versa. But at that moment it was, why can't I do better at this? And I remember that night that I was in that hospital, and they had hooked me up to an IV. I don't even know how many nausea medications I went through, but not one of them seemed to phase me. And that night I was just alone in this room. My husband had taken our son, who was about 15 months old at the time, taken him home to put him to bed, and I was just in this dark, quiet room. The only sound, the soft beeping of the machines in the background. And I just remember thinking, I don't think I can do this. I don't know how to do this. And at that moment, a nurse walked in. And I can't tell you what she did or said, but I remember that moment because it was as if that word team came flooding back. And here I had been so focused on doing this on my own and not complaining and not being a burden to anyone. And I can handle this. And I realized in that moment, I could not handle it. And I didn't have to. There was this entire team around me supporting me if I would just allow them to do that. And not just the medical, I mean, certainly that was there, but friends and family, neighbors willing to pitch in and help out. How can we, hey, can we take your son off your hands for a little bit? Can we help clean? Can we cook dinner? What can we do? And I started to realize that I needed to let that in, that there is strength in not only accepting help when offered, but in asking for help when needed. And that was a huge turning point in my treatment. Not that it made it, super easy, but it did make it easier.
My God. Thank you for sharing that, because one of the hardest things is to ask for help, especially when you are so independent and used to doing everything on your own and working at such a high level. I can imagine for you. And then to say, man, I need some help, it's tough. But the beautiful part, and if you heard Shannon just say this, so many people showed up, so many people pitched in and grabbed, as you talked about, helped with your son, help cook a meal, help clean. Those things are so priceless when you're going through something like this. So thank you for mentioning that. It's I have a program that helps you. How do you find your team? How do you formulate your team? And that's important, especially when you're going through this, because you don't have to go through this alone. So thank you for highlighting that.
Absolutely. Well, and I just want to say it's not only important, it is essential. It is essential to find your team. When you think about athletes, we don't win a gold medal alone. We have coaches, we have trainers, we have the people that put the equipment on the floor, we have judges, we have like a whole host of like a zillion people that are the team that makes it happen. We do not do it alone. You have to have that team going through any obstacle, and especially a cancer diagnosis. You've got to formulate that team. You've got to trust that team. You've got to rely on that team. And if you don't have, not everyone has friends and family right there with them, but I want everyone to know that there are advocates. There are people out there that are willing to step in and help. And so I'm glad that you're doing what you do because it allows people to reach out and get the help that they need. And I just want everyone to know that they do not have to do this alone.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And so let's talk about it. That if you guys listen to this, she was going through this. Shannon's was going through this with a brand new baby. Like, how do you balance that? I mean, you're fighting to just get this, to get to get through this rare type of treatment or cancer diagnosis, but you also have a family and you have a husband. Like how did you do that?
It's a challenge. I mean, everyone, you don't get to choose when you get this diagnosis or what the diagnosis is. You have to kind of deal with what's thrown your way. A lot of people don't know that at the same time I was going through my treatment, my father-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. In fact, we had back-to-back surgery dates. He had his on January 12th, mine was the next day. So to I don't even know to this day how my husband held it all together. Then we had this new baby and all of these things going on, and that's life. You don't really get to choose what you're thrown. You just, it's how you deal with it. And for me, it it was trying to find that balance. And I think the biggest issues I kind of was dealing with was, one, I'm a new mom, so everything's scary anyway. And now, how do I be a new mom while trying to get through this treatment? And I had a really, really tough time. So the nausea was horrific, and it took a little while for us to try to get that under control. The fatigue, and I was used to working really hard. I worked 6 to 7 hours a day, 6 days a week in the gym for, a decade. I knew what tired was, but this fatigue was something I had never felt before. And I remember explaining it to someone one day, and I said, I'm not just tired. I lie in bed for 5 minutes contemplating how I'm going to move my right leg over about 6 inches so it can fall off the edge of the bed, and that might give me a little leverage to sit up. And then after another 5 minutes of sitting there, I can figure out, do I have enough will and energy to stand up? And if I could get through a shower without sitting down, or I remember brushing like the top of my teeth and then sitting down to rest and then brushing them out of my teeth. There were some really tough days. And so then you add on trying to take care of a 15-month-old baby at the same time, and really wanting to be present for that was not only physically difficult, but also emotionally challenging, because I really wanted to be there. And so I had to kind of learn that balance is okay. Kids are resilient. I didn't have to be there 24/7 for him to really know that I was there. And it was important for me to take care of my own health so I could be my best for him. And that was one of the biggest issues. The other one was losing my hair. And I think for any mom, like, losing their hair, I had this frizzy, curly, crazy hair anyway, so it wasn't like I was really worried about my hairdo. But my son, I was worried. What if he's scared of bald mommy? Like, he's never seen me without hair. And the day that a friend of mine who's a 2-time survivor, she shaved my head after my hair was falling out. And I came home that night, and the lady that had been sitting with my son that evening, I explained to her that I was really worried the next day. What is he going to think? Is he going to be scared? Is he going to want to get close to me? And she said, Shannon, if you're not okay with it, he's not going to be either. And it was that huge moment of, okay, this is really not about him. This is about what's going on in my head. And so I took a couple days just wearing hats around him till I could kind of look in the mirror and feel my head and get used to this new lovely look. And then one day we sat on the floor and he was playing blocks, and I took my hat off and he looked at me, and then he kept playing, like, okay, apparently you got a new hairstyle, whatever. So I guess at the end of the day, what I realized is kids are resilient. Be open with them, be honest with them, at their level, but kids are incredibly resilient.
Yes. And I hope any parent that's listening in on this takes that away, takes that gem, being able to be open and honest with your kids. And that sometimes that's difficult because you don't know how they're going to process it. But if you listen to Shannon, kids, they bounce back, and they're going to be able to appreciate you even more later in life, I would imagine, because you were honest with them. You never held anything back from them. And so thank you, Shannon, for sharing that with us. We always talk about the victory and how we come through and we get through this. And, I always ask, how was it? But talk to us about some of the tough days that you've gone through, because a lot of times people are going through some dark periods and they feel just by themselves, and how do I get out of this hole? I just do you want to give up sometimes. So talk to us a little bit, if you can recall maybe a dark time you've gone through and maybe how you gotten through that.
I think, probably one of my darkest times that I've already highlighted was just that first week being in back in the hospital, and just having that really tough moment of it was the first time I really thought to myself, I can't do this. And that was scary for me because I've been through a lot with training. I've had the ups, I've had the downs, I've had injuries, I've had potentially career-ending moments, and I've always kind of bounced back and thought, all right, this is the cards we're dealt. Let's go forward. Let's do this. And so that was a tough time. I think what you said about feeling alone is so important, because a lot of times you can have a lot of people around you, whether that's family, friends, medical, and still feel completely isolated, still feel completely alone. And I can remember that really just prior to my diagnosis, when I was kind of in that wait and observe period. And everyone wanted to chime in with, oh, it's probably nothing. Oh, don't worry, you're healthy. But they meant well. They truly meant well. And I've caught myself about to say that to someone else, since then, and I've caught myself and said, no, 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 that's not the piece of advice that they need. But they meant well, and yet I processed it as feeling even more alone and even more isolated, because I thought, well, you're not my doctor. If my doctor doesn't know, how do you know? And it almost kind of compounded the pressure that I was feeling of the what ifs. And again, I have been on the caregiver side. My mother is a two-time survivor, and I'm sure I said those exact same things to her. So it's not a knock on anyone, because everyone was just trying to be nice. Um, but it can often make you feel a little bit more alone, because you might not be able to kind of voice what you're really feeling, or you might not want to voice what you're really feeling because you don't want to burden others. And I think that was probably a hard part for me, is and especially being fairly public, is I didn't just want to be complaining or constantly talking about my darkest fears, and I also didn't want those to become the only thing that I thought about. And that was the other thing that I learned through gymnastics, was when those negative thoughts are coming at you, you have to stop them at the door. There is plenty of negative, but we have to focus on that positive step forward, whatever that might be. And it might be as small as, I remember just thinking on some days, I got to wake up. And it stops there, in period, full stop. I got to wake up. And so no matter what else happens today, I am here. I'm going to enjoy it to the best of my abilities, even if I'm sick, even if I'm tired. I get this day. And so grasping on to those small nuggets, those small moments of just happiness or joy or thankfulness, gratefulness, was kind of what helped me kind of dig myself out of some of that negativity, some of those really, really dark moments. And I also think it's not just during treatment that those moments happen. So one of the moments that are really kind of hit that dark moment was after my treatment had ended. My treatment ended May 2nd, 2011. I was so excited. And in my head, I had built this up like, okay, my hair is going to grow back. I'm going to feel good. We're done. We're off to the races. I can feel good again. And nothing changed. And 2 weeks went by and nothing changed. I was still sick as could be. I was still nauseous. I had neuropathy on my hands. I couldn't open a bottle of water by myself. It was just all of these things. And I remember calling my mom and just kind of venting to her. And she had gone through her own diagnosis, a different type of cancer. And she said, just stop. You have got to give yourself a little bit of grace. You are not going to feel 100% overnight. No one needs to expect that of you, and you should not expect that of yourself. You need to take the time to heal. And my doctor, my oncologist, had told me it could take up to a year to really start feeling like myself again. And I thought, no, I mean, I can do it in no time. I mean, I got this. And he was exactly right. And I just had to kind of pack my patience a little bit. And I I kept talking with my mom. She said, just would you call me back in a week and let me know how you're doing? And I would just kind of check in with myself instead of seeing how I was doing every single day, as far as like the nausea level or the fatigue level. It was kind of every other week because I could see a little bit more of a change that way. But I think it's important to realize that you're not going to necessarily be 100% when that bell rings or when therapy is over, no matter what your diagnosis, no matter what your trajectory. Sometimes you can have the best outcome and you still don't feel like yourself for a while, and that's okay. We all have to take our time, kind of follow our own journey and not expect too much too quickly. And I think if we can kind of give ourselves that grace, then it allows for those darker days to be a little bit brighter.
I love that. Thank you for that. And sometimes I hope you listen to what Shannon said. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. And sometimes those dark days are a lot, and you want to just catapult,
Yeah.
right? Especially for us who are athletes, those who are athletic, those who have their mindset on that, it's a struggle. And so I hope you listen to what Shannon is saying. Give yourself the grace, give yourself some time, allow your body to heal, take in those thankful moments, be thankful for the little things, and it's a process. And when it's a process, I hate the process, by the way. Uh,
I do too.
yeah, I've learned to appreciate it, but it's the process. So getting back to good health, it just takes time, and it's a building block one day on the other. So thank you so much, Shannon, for really highlighting that. You know, what I want to talk about is one, I want to talk about two things. One, how was it for your husband going through this process? Because sometimes the caregivers get overlooked. How was it for your husband and your family going through something like this and watching you and then trying to find balance for themselves?
It's so important to talk about the caregivers because they truly are this essential part of the process, but they're often overlooked. And I don't know that I even realized how challenging of a year it was for my husband. I mean, I was trying to deal with just getting through each day. And so I was very involved with myself at the point. and and so he's dealing with me, and he's in our child and his father and helping his mother and all of these things. And it was New Year's the next year, and he just kind of had this huge sigh of relief, and he said something small like, we made it through the year. And it was in that moment that I realized all of these things that he had been dealing with, that he kind of just focused on and didn't allow that to kind of overflow onto me or anyone else, but he was dealing with it. And I thought back to kind of how it was to be a caregiver for my mother when she was going through her first bout of cancer. And really, I had not had anyone very close to me um, go through cancer before, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to be a caregiver. I kept thinking, how can I help? What can I do? But I felt like there really just wasn't anything. I felt like I just never was doing enough. And then going through it as a patient, I realized I was doing exactly what she needed me to do, which is hold her hand. or, listen to her, just be that ear so that she could vent or talk about whatever was going on. That's what she needed. And so for all of the caregivers out there, I want you to know that you are so appreciated, and you may not always feel like it at that moment, because a lot of times we're just trying to make it through the day as a patient, but you're so appreciated. And it doesn't have to be these huge gestures. It can be as simple as driving someone to their appointments, their chemotherapy or their doctor's appointments. It's sitting with them, reading a book, or holding their hand, or just listening to them. And those are such important things that we all need in life, but especially going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment. And I think kind of what I've taken from that, also from kind of my health and fitness days, is that caregivers also need to take care of themselves, because often they get lost in the shuffle. They're giving so much to the patient that they're no longer taking care of their nutrition, their fitness, getting their sleep, getting what they need to get done as far as their mental stability and mental health, as well as their emotional health and all of these things. So you can't stop living, and you can't stop taking care of your own health because you're helping someone else. We have to find ways to balance those two things, and know, again, at the end of the day, if you're taking care of your health, you are better for the patient that you're trying to help.
Yes. Yes. And what a small thing your husband said, right? We got through the year, but what an impact that it had on you, right? And for me, listening to that, it says it helps you really appreciate, the caregivers. It's as if they're going through cancer as well. And for him to say, we got through that, it's like he was battling that too. It was like as if he had cancer. And when just,
They're in the fight. They're in the fight with you every step of the way.
yeah. And so just for you to acknowledge that and to give that, I hope anyone listening that's a caregiver can appreciate it. You appreciate it. And we always want to highlight and let you know you're not forgotten. You're a big piece, a big part of the team. So thank you so much for that. So here we ask the Shannon who was the elite athlete, the Shannon who was the Olympian winner. How has life changed the Shannon who you were before into now, like your perspective or your purpose? What's changed from that Shannon to the one we have in front of us today?
I've thought a lot about that. I think one of the biggest changes that I've noticed was really that perspective, and that idea of stopping to smell the roses and really appreciating moments along the way. At When as a gymnast, I was really always about the next goal, because I'm very goal oriented. I still am. That's just the way I'm built. But I would, win a competition, and immediately I wouldn't even kind of celebrate. I would just move on to, okay, well, what's the next skill I need to learn? What's the next competition I can enter? I made my first Olympic team. I won 5 medals, came home, and I was back in the gym 3 days later, because that's what I wanted to do. Okay, everyone else party and talk about medals. I'm going to go learn some more skills, because I've got another competition coming up. And I did the same thing in school. I think I walked at my high school graduation, but I didn't in college. And I didn't say for the graduation at law school. I was on to starting a company and doing all these other things and having kids. We can fall into that same trap. Oh, they started walking. What's the next goal? What's the next thing they're going to do? And I think the small blessing that this cancer journey has given me is that ability to stop, to pause and say, you know what? We are just going to enjoy this moment. And we're not going to think real quick about the next thing. I'm still goal driven, I'm still goal oriented, but I'm going to stop and appreciate this moment today. And I'm so thankful for that. And I think particularly with my children, but I think in general, with friends, with family, being able to just pause and enjoy the here and now and be living in the present is so essential. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest changes in me, personality wise, and just in my life.
Yes. Thank you for that because you don't pause. We don't pause enough. And to hear I have the same issue, right? You finish one goal and it's off to the next. You don't really stop to appreciate what you really done or share that moment of what you've done with someone else or allow that other person who's involved with it to really appreciate it because you're moving on to the next, right? So thank you so much for highlighting that. And this is the question I want to ask you because you are in a unique position being an Olympic winner. What is that feeling that you get when you win the gold? That that feeling that takes over your body, right? You just won that. You nailed it. You're at the top. When you have that feeling and you compare that to the what you've gone through, where you're at now, how do you compare that? How would you say, I don't know, those two things, that feeling of success, right? They're different, but they're the same. How do you compare those two?
It is hard, and I don't know that I actually do. And I think a lot of times people think of winning the gold as kind of that's the feeling. And for me, it really wasn't. Winning the gold was the outcome of hitting a routine. And so for me, that moment of elation, that moment of I did this was sticking a landing. That was the moment. And then the judges do what they do, and you might win and you might lose, but that was the moment. And I don't know that I can really equate that to cancer. And I say that because you can't win cancer, right? And I learned that the hard way. I could not outwork cancer. It's you you never know. It's kind of there's all of these great treatments available, even more today than there ever have been before. There are more survivors today than there ever have before, and those are all great things. Um, but I was willing. I again, I'm the workhorse. I'm just okay. I'm just going to be the hardest worker in the room. And in cancer, I realized you just can't say, okay, I'm going to work really hard and then I'll be fine. And so I really had to learn that balance of wanting to give it my all and doing what I could do, obviously, and follow my doctor's guidelines and being an advocate for myself, but listening to the medical and getting that team support. And there's all these things that you can control, but there's some things that you can't. And that was the hard part for me, was learning to be okay with that, learning that I just had to kind of let go and let God for a little bit, and for a lot of it, and just letting go of the what ifs and just going into every day and saying, okay, I'm going to do what I can do, but I'm not going to try to own everything, and that's going to be okay. So that's kind of where I ended up, um, with trying to kind of come out of this. And I don't know that you're ever really out of cancer. It's a lifelong journey, but that's kind of where I've come to out of the treatment, and now 13 years cancer free. That's where I've landed. I'm going to
I
do my
love
best
that.
each day, and then the rest I'm going to let go of.
Well said. Well said. So would you say in a sense it's been humbling?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've been humbled many times in my life, but we all remember the gold medal moments, but we tend to forget the times that, you fall flat on your backside in front of the world. And I've done that many times. Those are humbling, but cancer humbles you in such a different way, such an inner way, that I think it's only made me better and made me stronger. helped my perspective. It's helped my level of joy and appreciation of every moment of every day. And not that I'm someone that's like super happy, cheery 24/7. That's just not me. Things are going to happen, and I'm, not always going to be the happiest camper in the room. But on average, I just choose to have joy in my life. I choose how I react to things in a more positive way. I mean, I've kind of tried to do that. I think that's the type of person I am, but even more so, things are going to happen. It's not the end of the day. Actually remember, right. This was in the middle of chemo, and I had felt good enough. I took my son to lunch, and here he is, this little toddler, and he's got this plate of spaghetti. And I don't know what he was thinking, because he is a sweet, kind, polite little boy. And he just took the spaghetti and like put the ball on his head. And I don't know where that came from, what he was thinking. And in that moment where you're about to go, what are you doing? I just laughed. And we laughed and we cleaned it up and everything was fine. But it was that moment where, you know what? I'm gonna choose laughter. Now he's not gonna do it again. We're gonna have a little talk about this, but I'm going to choose joy. And that's what I've decided. I'm just going, no matter what comes my way, I'm going to handle it to the best of my abilities, and I'm going to choose joy.
I love that. So well spoken. Let me ask you this then. How have you found peace in surrendering?
Again, it's a work in progress. um, I think being humbled so many times um, allows for that, because when you're humble, that's when you have to surrender. And that's when you say, this is not something I can do on my own, or this is something I need to rework, or do better, or do differently. And it causes you to re-examine where you're at and what you're doing. And actually, I remember there was one moment, this was a few years after my treatment was over. And here I am, feeling pretty good. I had, we weren't sure that we'd be able to have any more children after the surgery and chemotherapy. But we had our miracle baby, my daughter, and she had just been born, and she might have been a year old. And I was out in the backyard running with my son, trying to run with my son. He wanted to play tag. I'm like, sure, that sounds great. And I started to run after, he bolted, and I started to run after him. And I was maybe 3 or 4 steps in, and I collapsed. And I played it off as if I had just tripped and fallen. But I knew inside, I knew that I simply collapsed because I wasn't strong enough to run after my 4-year-old son. And that was a moment for me as an athlete, as someone who, is fitness and focused on healthy living and all of these good things. I was so weak at that moment. And that, for me, that was another humbling moment, when here I thought I was seeing the light and I was cancer free and all is right in my world. And then boom, you're really not as strong as you thought you were. And that was another moment where I thought, this is telling me something. Okay, what am I learning in this humbling experience? And then that led me to focus a little bit more on strength instead of just walking, and just kind of the mechanics of it and how I can help others. But it's those continual humbling moments that allow you to move forward in different ways and really examine who you are and where you are and what you need to be doing.
Shannon, we appreciate you so much. Your experiences here has brought so many gems, and I hope so many people can benefit from this. Shannon is a person who is resilient, and you learn so much through the humility. Life is going to humble us. I don't care who you are. You are going to get humbled in life. And the key is to learn from, take something out of that so that you can be a better person. You can give to someone, you can help someone else who may be going through that. So thank you so much for being vulnerable with us here, Shannon, on our show today. And before we let you go, what would you like to say to those who are listening in? What is something that you would like to give them?
I guess the one thing, and I have the wonderful benefit, I get to speak all over the country, and I get to talk to so many survivors, and so many have helped me along my journey. What I want every survivor to know, and every caregiver to know, is that you are not alone. Cancer, the whole space, it can feel like a very lonely place when you're going through it, but you do not have to do this alone. And again, I go back to what I said earlier, there is strength and not only accepting the help when offered, but also in asking for that help when needed. And it is so essential that we advocate for ourselves and that we reach out and ask for that help when needed, because there are so many out there that are willing to step in and help.
Yes. Don't be shy.
No,
Shannon Miller, everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on All Talk Oncology. It's been a blessing to have you, and I wish you much success in everything you do, and we appreciate you
thank you very much.
so much. And as I say to everyone, you're not alone in this. We're in this together. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.
So stay connected with us on All Talk Oncology Cancer Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that, right? Wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, make sure you subscribe and continue to spread that word, right? Engage in this, because your engagement can help someone stay alive. And this is what we're talking about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Again, this is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.